Ahoy, ye scallywags. Welcome back to Beyond the Campfire.
Indeed, indeed. We are
I'm
talking.
here.
Uh,
I'm here with Mr. Retard. I probably can't say that. That'll cancel us.
oh yeah, we can redo it. Yeah.
No. It's fine. We'll leave it.
Okay.
I just know sometimes they don't like it when you say that word. They've canceled
Yep.
that word. Even though I am one, so I can say it.
One of my friends DM'd me about language on this podcast, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you need to put a warning because sometimes I'll listen to it around children." And I was like, "Well, the episodes have an E before it on Spotify, but I guess if you're watching on YouTube or any other place, warning,
Well,
occasionally."
I stopped taking off the E, and there's a reason I stopped taking off the explicit was because one, a lot of people were saying, like I've cut back on how much I've cussed on the podcast. And a
Mm,
lot of people were saying that if you're not using too much language, you don't need the explicit because if you put the explicit on the podcast, it can actually drop your views.
okay.
So as long as we're not talking about like Jack the Ripper, or
Yeah.
Waco, where you need to put an explicit, as long as some of the stories we're talking about, there's no like anybody being torn apart, I feel like we don't really need to put the explicit.
Okay. That's
Um, I know on YouTube that I did put like on YouTube, it's not for kids because I really think our podcast is definitely like PG
oh
13. But yeah, I would just say, you know, based off the way me and Steven are, probably wouldn't listen to it around kids.
yeah. If this is your first time listening to Beyond the Campfire, welcome. We are a podcast that talks about conspiracy theories, cults, ghosts, cryptids, anything that might go bump in the night, anything that you would want to talk about at a campfire per se. I am Steven, the Indian. We have Will, the cowboy. And so if you like cowboys and Indians and you like spooky stuff, this is the podcast for you. Now, the reason Will was calling me some names earlier was because I am currently dressed like Monkey D. Luffy. If you are a fan of that,
Weeb,
if you're a fan of the anime One Piece, you will know who that is.
weeb.
And the reason I am dressed like that is today we are talking about pirates. We are talking about ghost ships. And so, I thought, hey, you know what? Why not? Why not dress like one of
A
my favorite
weeb.
weeb? Yes, I am a weeb. So, Will, what we got on the podcast today?
Well, like you talking about, we're going to be talking about the SS Ourang Medan. That's how you say it. I kept thinking in my head, I was like the SS Ourang Medan, but
Uh,
that
when
ship's thick.
when I first saw the name, I just read it really quickly, so I thought it said SS Orangutan, and then I was like, wait, two, it's two different words. It's not, it's not orangutan. It's Orang Medan. So, um, so yeah, definitely an interesting name. But yes, this we'll get into the lore. We'll talk about the whereabouts of the ship today, whether it actually exists, what caused crew members to die, because pretty much all of them died, with the exception of maybe one, and we'll talk about if that one survivor, if he even existed too. But yeah, again, Beyond the Campfire, ghosts, pirates. We're getting into a little bit of all of that
Mm-hmm.
today on the show. So, welcome aboard, and I guess we can go right into it. Okay, so in the 1940s, a American ship was traveling when it got a strange radio signal from a ship that claimed to be called the SS Ourang Medan. So the Americans. Oh, my laptop is freezing up, so I cannot scroll my notes. That's weird.
Uh-oh. Should write it on paper like I do.
I know, right? Yeah. I am a 21st century man in a lot of ways. Okay, there it goes. Okay, so SS Orang Medan, the Americans get this weird message in SOS, and it says this. It says, "We float. All officers, including Captain, dead. Lying in chat room and on bridge. Probably whole crew dead. I die." And actually, well, probably after we finish recording this, I'm gonna send you probably a screenshot of this message too, so viewers can see it. But that's it. That's the whole message. Is very short
Wow.
and very very odd. Again, I'm going to say it one
Straight
more
to the
time.
point with it there.
Yeah, I'm going to say it one more time for those listening on the audio only version of this podcast. But it says, "We float, all officers, including Captain Dead, lying in chart room and on bridge. Probably whole crew dead. I die." Well, what are your initial reactions?
Well, first off, when it goes, we float. All I could think about was it. We all float down here, Georgie.
Yeah,
Come on
yeah,
down, Georgie. We all float down here.
definitely, definitely some creepiness going on. So, not the most fun SOS to
No.
receive, but nonetheless, that is what these guys ended up getting. So all these guys. By the way, this is happening on the Straits of Malacca, which is between Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. We'll get now. This happened in the 1940s. Apparently, there's some discrepancy on dates, which I'll talk about in just a second because that'll be important. There's also a little bit of discrepancy on where this event took place, but most people that tell the story will agree it's in the Straits of Malacca. Some people might claim it's on Marshall Island or some other places, but for just for this initial telling, we're going to say it was the Straits of Malacca. But this American ship, the Silver Star, they received this and they go and investigate, and eventually they do find the ship, and they try to signal the ship. They try to see if anybody's on board. They're not really seeing anybody, and so they decide to send out a search party. Search party gets on the ship, and sure enough, they find a ship full of dead men. They go on, and Will, you could probably throw up the picture here. But this is one of the pictures of apparently how the men looked. So the men are just frozen. Their mouths are outstretched in shock. Their eyes are wide open in fear, and it's almost as if they turned to stone. It's almost as if Medusa herself had come down and they gazed upon her and they turned to stone. Uh, it's unclear what exactly they saw. It's unclear exactly what happened to them and how they were left on this in the state. But typically, when you see a dead man, I don't know how many of you have seen dead people. I personally do not work at a funeral home or the morgue, but
I've seen
uh,
dead people.
yeah, the only times I've really seen dead people are at the funeral when they have an open casket. But yeah, typically, their eyes are closed. They might have a more, maybe not quite a peaceful look, but they certainly do not look like they are afraid. These dead men, eyes are wide open, their mouths are agape, and many of them were pointing up at the sky or pointing to kind of another direction in the ship. So very strange,
Hmm.
very, very strange. Well, what are you thinking so far?
Well, I mean, that is kind of strange. Like, what? I mean, if you're in shock, you obviously saw something spooky, you know, and it's like, so what did they see? What could kill a man with fear? You know,
Yeah, it almost reminds me of Bird Box a little bit because in the movie Bird Box you actually never see what the monster is, but you could tell the monster was there because people would look at the monster and they would be driven mad simply by
yeah.
looking or so. It's kind of like this. We don't know exactly what the crewmen saw before they died, but we do know that there was something there based off of their reactions. One thing that was also interesting. So even the ship's dog had died, and the way that the dog was dead was it was in mid snarl. So whatever it was looking at, it was about to like bark or yell at it, but in mid snarl, the dog also became frozen and died. So
Hmm.
everybody on the crew is dead. The dog is even dead.
They even got the dog,
They
not
even got,
Fido.
yeah, poor Fido. He got frozen by Medusa or ghosts or pirates or I'll get into a couple of the theories in just a second. But the Americans of the Silver Star began to investigate. However, they don't have a lot of time. So shortly after they arrived on board, smoke was seen rising from the cargo hold of the Ourang Medan. Uh, before Apparently they knew what was about to happen because the members of the Silver Star quickly got back on their own ship and started to sail away. And within seconds of them sailing away, the Orang Medan exploded,
Oh
leaving
boy.
nothing but a story for the newspapers.
Mm.
So it explodes, the ship sinks into a fiery furnace, and to this day, people say it is somewhere in the depths of the Straits of Malacca. And that's pretty much the story. We'll get into the theories, the newspapers that reported it, because this was reported by newspapers, which I think is very interesting. Because we're going to talk in just a second about some people claiming that the Orang Medan never existed, that the one crew member that maybe survived, was actually whether he actually existed or not. But yeah, that's pretty much the story. If it did exist, if it was a real ship, we sadly do not have sadly do not have the records or the ship itself to actually investigate it. Um, but yeah, very, very, very strange. Very, very strange indeed.
Yeah, having the crew be in fear of fright and then the ship just explodes.
Yeah, no, it's odd. So let's get into some of the discrepancies, because a lot of reasons people think this story never happened is there's actually three different dates for the story. So the earliest record of the Orang Medan was in 1940. It was reported by a British newspaper. Very small section of the article, but it said, "Hey, the SS Ourang Medan exploded under mysterious circumstances. Everybody is left dead." That's 1940. Still pretty early in World War
Yeah.
II. Obviously, America had not yet quite entered into World War II, but the 1940 version of the story is interesting because the British newspaper reported that it was not an American ship that found the Orang Medan, but rather that it was a British ship that investigated the Orang Medan. That one's a little bit smaller. Most people that believe the Orang Medan existed, now they have a hard time explaining why this particular newspaper exists or why it reported what it did. But most versions of the story come actually from the 1947 and 1948 version. So, for whatever reason, a full 7 and 8 years later, two other newspapers reported the same story. There's a ship called the SS Ourang Medan. It exploded. Depending on the version of the newspaper, it exploded either in the Strait of Malacca or in the Marshall Islands, and all of the crew members were dead. Uh, One newspaper reported that there was one survivor, a guy named Jack Rabbit. We'll talk about Jack Rabbit in just a second. And yes, that is the name. I know it's
That is so funny.
yeah, I know. So that's not an innuendo or anything. That's
No,
Jack
that's his
Jack
name.
Rabbit. That's his name. So
Jack Rabbit.
yeah, he's not quite as bad as other names that you could have, but nonetheless, it is the name we have. So, why the discrepancy? Why is there three versions of the story printed in reputable newspapers in 1940, 1947, and 1948? Why is this happening? Let me go through my notes. But in the meantime, do you have any thoughts, comments, concerns, or questions?
I think that we need to go get some sonar, and I think we need to get some diving equipment, and I think we need to go find this thing.
For sure. And hey, maybe that's one thing you and me do one day with the Patreon. Hopefully, if the Patreon does really well, because what happened is part of the reason some people think this ship never existed is because we just haven't found it. There's some people that have gone and looked in the Strait of Malacca to see if this ship could be found there, and nothing has been found. But okay, let's talk about the Orang Medan. So there's this there's this registry called Lloyd's Register of Ships,
Mhm.
and it has kept a record of every merchant ship since 1764.
Good
So,
lord.
yeah, 1764. So every ship that has you know brought some kind of goods, some kind of spices. If you, for me as an Indian, I like my curry and spices and seasoning. If you're somebody like Will, who's a white guy, maybe you don't really season your chicken that much.
Hey,
Yeah.
listen, I'm not associated with those other white people, okay?
Hey, I love my white friends, but
I have some Spain in me.
when I go
Spanish.
to my white friend's house, the chicken is not quite seasoned as much. But
Dude, I feel like I'm part Cajun, man. I got like slap your mama. I put on there. I got some Cajun seasoning. I put some salt.
that's
White
fair.
pepper is better than black pepper because white pepper adds some heat.
Let's not make any more racist comments against white people in the course of this podcast. But yeah,
Hey, well,
Lloyd
we can't be
Register,
canceled for that.
it's it's tracking these every merchant ships, wanting to make sure that worldwide trade is going efficiently. Obviously, the British Empire was pretty prominent in 1764. Lloyd's Register of Ships has no ship by the name of SS Ourang Medan. It's just never documented by Lloyd's Register of Ships.
Huh.
So pretty damning. However, if World War II was happening, one of the mysteries of the SS Ourang Medan was that it wasn't actually a merchant ship; it was actually a spy ship that was preparing to go to Japan to set the scene and possibly see if Japan was attempting to attack either any of the European nations or possibly the United States itself. Remember,
Hmm.
if the Orang Medan had exploded in 1940, as the British newspaper had first reported, it's possible that this was a ship secretly sent out by, wait for it, the government, just
Oh boy,
to
they're
try to
back.
see if maybe a Pearl Harbor type event or something had happened. And obviously,
They
if this
didn't work.
if the ship had exploded in 1940, then this was obviously before Pearl Harbor. Now, why do I mention this? If this was a spy ship rather than a merchant ship, then it's not going to be on Lloyd's Register of Ships, right?
No, no.
So, well, what do you think about that theory? Because, like, yeah, if this was a merchant ship, then if it's not in Lloyd's Register of Ships, it probably didn't exist. But I know you're all for a lot of government stuff. Does this seem like something the U.S. government or maybe a European government would try to set out?
I mean, based off the information I got, um, you're saying all the people died of fear, and then the ship exploded. Somebody set a fire. You know,
Oh
and
yeah.
I don't think Medusa starts fires. Okay, maybe in Stephen's heart, but
Oh
on
boy.
ships, she doesn't start a fire. I mean, I don't think, and that's where it's a question of okay, you know, if the SS Ourang Medan is real, and you're not seeing it on the ship registry that goes back centuries, that obviously is accurate and up to date and keeps track of all these ships. You can't find it on the registry. World War II is in full swing. I wouldn't put it past the US government to, you know, create a fake merchant vessel because obviously, the website you're using, they didn't have the internet back then. So they can't just like look up, is the SS Ourang Medan an actual cruise ship? So that's where it's like, could the people have died? Could it they have been spying on the Japanese for the Americans because obviously they were growing pretty powerful at that time. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, the Japanese found out, attacked the ship, sunk it. But then the question of is, you know, you said the people, although they were frozen in stone, they had fear on their faces. The dog was snarling. If this was an attack by the Japanese, the people wouldn't, they'd just be dead. They wouldn't be stoned. They wouldn't be in fear. So that's where it's very much like I could see it being a spy ship. The only problem is why did the crew die that way? So it could have been a spy ship,
It could have been.
but why did the crew die that way?
Yeah. There are a couple of theories, but yeah, if the Orang Medan did exist, spy ship to me seems to make the most sense. Uh, and with the timeline now, obviously, if this event took place in 1947 or 1948, that might cause a little bit more issues. Uh, but here we go. So the ship crew members were trying to keep the cargo of the ship a secret. Some of the obviously the Americans weren't on the board very. By the way, I don't know if I've mentioned this. The SS Ourang Medan was supposedly some kind of Dutch ship.
Hmm.
So the crew members were Dutch, or at least they said they were Dutch. That might have been a cover
Yeah.
for because the SS Ourang Medan was saying that they were Dutch merchants collecting spices and then delivering it back. However, um, it seemed that the actual thing that they were carrying were potassium cyanide and nitroglycerine,
Hmm.
which are explosives. Which
Yeah.
again supports that. Hey, again, this might have been some kind of spy ship that was either delivering weapons or trying to do some things,
Or it
uh,
could have been a failsafe.
or a failsafe. Yeah, right. And
Ask me questions, we blow up.
for sure. And there's a lot of secrecy involving this materials. I mean, if you're transporting uh, this kind of inventory, that's something sensitive. That's something that you do not want to actually have revealed. The theory is that these some of these substances were slowly leaking out and causing sicknesses among the crewmen,
Ah.
which drove some of them mad, which caused some of them to die like mid action. And so, when people are talking about like the fear and stuff, it's possible that the gases were causing some of them to hallucinate and start seeing things like demons, ghosts, witches. I was reading an article. This is somewhat related, but I was reading an article a few days ago about the scientist that was experimenting with shrooms, and he said when he was using the LSD shrooms, he said that he saw all kinds of like demons and monsters and things. And so, if you're the crew members of the SS Ourang Medan and these gases are slipping out, maybe they're starting to see some of these things, and as they're dying, they are seeing some of these monsters. And I mean, hey, if you're a dog, I'm imagining this maybe even is affecting the dog and
Yeah.
or form. So that's one of the theories. That's one of the theories of
Yeah.
exactly what was going on with him. What do you think about that theory, Will?
That can make some sense. I mean, it you said the bodies were like stone. If that was just something they made up, I could definitely see this theory working. Just because it's like you said, I mean, if you're hallucinating and you're slowly dying and being poisoned, the last thing you think you're seeing is a demon coming at you, but in reality you're hallucinating. You're still going to make a face, and you could, you know, like mama always said, if you look stupid and you do that stupid face, it's going to freeze on you. So, could have happened, frozen with fear kind of thing. Maybe it could have been, a chemical leak. Cause it makes sense because if they, because this is just the way I'm thinking with like the whole spy ship, all the chemicals and stuff. If I'm a spy ship, I've got to at least have some cargo. But what if the cargo we use is a failsafe in case we are captured by the enemy or questioned? We blow the ship up, and then those chemicals start leaking, and then now you're hallucinating. You know I could definitely see that theory playing out well.
I agree. I agree with you there. I agree with you there. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it seems pretty plausible to me. Um, let's get into the pirate theories, and that's part of why, again, I am dressed like Monkey D. Luffy. Uh, pirates were, you know, pirates have been a threat for centuries. Obviously, you have the Great Pirate Era in the 1500s. You have Blackbeard the pirate, who, Edward Teach was. definitely terrorizing the American coastlands. But uh, one theory is that the crew, the potassium cyanide and the nitroglycerin was actually a failsafe, which you kind of pointed that out. But they said that actually what they were really guarding was some treasure, uh, a lot of
Mm.
gold, a lot of things, because the Dutch, if you know anything about the Dutch, if this is truly a Dutch ship, the Dutch had been raiding a lot of African kingdoms at that time. They had taken some treasures from one of the richest men in all of history, an African king named Mansa Musa. And so the theory is that the Orang Medan was actually transporting some of the treasures that they had found in Africa and was trying to transport it to another location, some kind of offshore Dutch bank reserve. And some pirates had become aware of this treasure, and they wanted it, as pirates do.
Yep.
And so the theory is that they attacked the ship. They uh, they actually so again, remember, the people that investigated the ship did not actually have a lot of time to investigate. They got on board, they saw the dead men, and then within a few minutes they had to leave because they realized the ship was about to explode. So the theory is the pirates killed the crew members in the normal way. But then what happened is, after they killed the crew members, they wanted to strike fear in the hearts of whoever found them. So the theory is that the pirates actually positioned the crew members to like have their eyes open and to look scared, kind of as a calling card to
Mm.
anybody that might have found the ship, that like, hey, if you mess with us or these seas, we're gonna do stuff to you like this. Um, it's possible. I kind of find it hard to think that
Yeah.
pirates be able to position people like that. But again, with the ship exploding, it's possible the Americans didn't really get a good look at the dead people to see 100% what they looked like. But what are your thoughts, Will?
I that that's tough. I mean, that's a tough theory. Just I guess what just makes it tough to go off of is the you know forming the person's face to look scared,
Right.
because I don't think you can do that. You know, and that's where it's kind of like, okay, yeah,
I think there are people on this planet that could do that, maybe if you work at a morgue or some kind of funeral home, because usually funeral homes try to make people look peaceful.
yeah,
Uh, and they are able to do that. They actually do dress up the person's face so that the dead person looks peaceful. However, I don't think a group of pirates have those skills. Uh, you know, uh, unless maybe you have a doctor like in like in the show One Piece. Chopper is the team's doctor, and he's able to do all kinds of things. But unless you're like Chopper or Trafalgar Law or something like that, like you're not going to be able to.
no,
I don't think a group of pirates is going to be able to move people's faces like that.
no,
Um, yeah. Last theory, or actually no, I think that kind of was the last theory, or at least the one theory that, well, the pirate theory was kind of out there too, but because I am who I am, I wanted to bring up that theory. Uh, but the oh well, okay. The last theory is the one I think is probably the most likely. So there was a ship that was attacked and was sunk either due to World War II or some other thing,
mm-hmm.
but its name was not the SS Ourang Medan. This guy, What's his name? Let me find the notes. The guy who first reported it in the San Francisco newspaper. This is the one in 1947. He's the one that tells the story. Oh, we didn't even talk about Jack Rabbit. Let me pull up Jack Rabbit.
Yeah, I was wondering where's this survivor guy at? Where's this Jackrabbit at?
Yeah, let's talk about Jack Rabbit, because he's an interesting fellow. So we hear about Jack Rabbit from a guy named Sylvester Silveri. Sylvester Silveri worked for the San Francisco Chronicle, which was a pretty reputable newspaper, and he later on claims that he talked to a survivor, a guy named Jack Rabbit, who Jack Rabbit got on a lifeboat, and he ended up on the what's it called? He ended up in the Marshall Islands, and he actually dies too. So he actually dies not too long after being interviewed, kind of in a similar way to the rest of the crew. He kind of freezes up, his body becomes kind of in a stone face. Now he doesn't get the same afraid look that some
Yeah.
of the other people have, but nonetheless, he's in a position to where he is um, also kind of looking too sharp. But Sylvester Silvestri claims that he talked to Rabbit. Rabbit reportedly washed up on the shore of the Marshall Islands with 6 dead crew members 10 days after the Ourang Medan exploded.
Mm.
There he made contact with a missionary and told him that he and his crew were headed to Shanghai. He claimed that 15,000 crates of unknown cargo were loaded onto the vessel before it set off for Costa Rica. He said he was recruited by the members of the SS Ourang, and he said that they refused to tell him what exactly that cargo was. That's where we get into the theories of it being some kind of treasure or some kind of other thing. But Rabbit says that he very quickly realized that it was a smuggling operation. A few days after being on the ship, Rabbit hears that his fellow crewmen are complaining of stomach cramps, and he grew suspicious. When one of the crew members died, he knew he had to find out what the ship was carrying. He peeked at the vessel's logbook and discovered that the crates had sulfuric acid, potassium cyanide, and nitroglycerin. The things that the Americans had also reported that they had found on the American ship. So we're getting some continuity, which is telling a story. You want to hear the same information from multiple sources. But from Rabbit, this is where we get the gas slowly leaking theory, because Rabbit then says he suspected that the sulfuric acid was leaking, creating a gas that was slowly suffocating the crew. As more men started dropping dead, Rabbit and 6 others sneaked away on a lifeboat. None of his crewmates survived the journey except him, but Rabbit himself also too died not long after telling the San Francisco Chronicle his tale. So,
I like that theory.
Yeah. Now, the problem with Jack Rabbit is no one has confirmed that this guy ever existed. We don't know where he's from. We don't know when he was born. They say he died a few days after, but we don't know where he's buried. There's no grave marker. And, people have tried to look for that name in, different school records, medical records, things like that in San Francisco area and other states. And nobody with that name has appeared. So, did he exist? It's possible that, again, if the Ourang Medan was a spy ship, maybe Jack Rabbit was a
alias,
was a fake name. Maybe it was a spy name, and we don't actually know his real name. Maybe he was sworn to secrecy. We don't really know.
Yeah,
but interesting character nonetheless. San Francisco Chronicle reported his story, and that's where we get some of the rumors of the gas theory from him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all I have. Will, what do you think? Do you think the SS Ourang Medan existed? Yes or no? What do you think?
I think it could have existed. And I think if it was a spy ship, I think if you go off the spy ship theory, that would explain the reason why we can't find any records of it. That would probably also go into the theory of why the crew, for example, like Jack Rabbit, we don't have any record of him, because that could have been an alias he was given because, it was a spy ship. So, like, if you're a spy ship, you're not going to give your real name. You're going to have this fake name. Everything's going to be faked so that you could do spying. I could see it
right
possibly also being an unregistered ship, and that they were smugglers and they were smuggling, explosives,
Mm.
um, that I could see. So I definitely think the Orang Medan did exist. Although I think there's a lot more questions than we got answers. I think answer wise, I think we've got a couple theories of what could have happened. You know, could it just have been a leak? Maybe. Could it have been something more supernatural? Maybe. Who knows? And I don't think we'll ever know until we find the ship and we can prove that it was real. But I think even after we prove it's real, I don't think we'll be able to figure out what truly happened.
For sure, yeah. All right, let's book a flight to the Straits of Malacca and see if we can find this thing.
And we'll go to Malacca and then we'll go to the Marshall Islands.
There you go.
We swear we're not on beach vacation.
Yeah, I think a ship did explode, but I'm not sure if it was actually called the SS Ourang Medan. So my theory is a ship exploded, whether it was a spy ship or merchant ship. I don't really know. But I think Sylvester Silvestri, because most of the fantastical rumors kind of
Yeah.
come. The 1940s tale, the 1940 version just reports a ship exploding named the Ourang Medan.
Yeah.
Sylvester Silvestri's thing in 1947, his story is a lot more fantastical. So to me, I kind of feel like the 1940 one is the original, and he found that, and he's like, "Hey, what if I just reposted the story
And
and
added
changed
pirates.
and added some more stories to make them more fanciful?" Because people wanted to make a buck, and I think he wanted to make a buck, and so I think
Yeah.
the story is the authentic one, and I think he got it and he made it more fantastical. So,
Yeah, because I think this was actually adapted into a movie. I think.
oh really? I know there's a video game called the Man of Medan that
Yeah.
came out a few years ago.
Well, there's a
Uh,
movie I remember seeing because I watched it one time. It was called Ghost Ship from the 2000s.
okay,
Have you ever heard of Ghost Ship? I
I
don't know
have.
if it's directly related, um, but in the Bering Sea, there's a salvage crew, and they discovered like the eerie remains of a grand passenger liner that was basically lost for 40 years. And so they go on board and they start slowly realizing what happened. And then it turns out like the ship was cursed by some supernatural being or something. It was a good movie. They apparently were going to give it a sequel, but they never gave it a sequel, and I'm sad. I wanted a sequel.
That's fair. That's fair. So, this I'm gonna go on an anime tangent for just a second, but well, have you heard of devil fruits?
No.
Okay, so in the One Piece anime, there's these things called devil fruits. Basically, if you find it, whoever eats the devil fruit, you get a certain power. So Monkey D. Luffy, his power when he eats the devil fruit, he gets the power to stretch, and that's like his power. And there's a lot of different devil fruits. It gives you a lot of different powers.
Hmm.
But one thing that happened is there's this warlord named Boa Hancock. She's just like tall, beautiful woman, but she eats a devil fruit, and she gets the power to turn men into stone. And so men want to look at her because she's beautiful. So when I was reading the story and I was like, "Oh, these guys are like kind of stone like." My first thought was like, "Oh, they looked at Boa Hancock." Uh, the only problem with this theory is in One Piece when the guys get turned into stone, they're usually looking very happy because they're looking at Boa Hancock. Whereas the guys here on um, this ship are looking terrified. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, that's devil fruits. You eat them, you get superpowers. But if there's a drawback, you can no longer swim for whatever reason. So if you eat a devil fruit, you can't swim anymore. So pros and
Mm,
cons, pros and cons.
pros and cons.
But I think that'll do it for this episode. Will, do you have any last minute thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns?
No, but next week we're going to stay in the ocean. We're
Okay.
going to go on the other side because it's finally my turn, guys. I'm coming back to talk.
Will is coming back to talk.
I'm
Yeah.
coming back, man. I got 2 episodes.
We're sailing the seven seas, and we're gonna find the One Piece and become the king of the pirates.
Well, this isn't a pirate story,
I,
but
Will is so done with my anime references for today, so that'll
I
do.
only watch. Listen, guys. Okay, if you're sitting there thinking William's uncultured, okay, I watch anime. Okay, I watch one
Oh.
anime, and that
Oh,
is Boondocks. Okay,
oh my
great
god.
anime, love it.
I I was looking up Chris Hansen TikToks the other day because I was bored. I didn't realize he was in Boondocks.
He
I don't know
is
if you've gotten to that episode yet. Do you know who Chris?
no, yeah, I know who Chris Hansen is.
Yeah, he's in a Boondocks episode.
That's hilarious. I think it's so funny because
Yeah.
in Boondocks, there's these two recurring characters, and one of them is voiced by oh crap, I know his name, Samuel L. Jackson. But it's funny because the character he's voicing in the show is white.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So it's like it's kind of funny because it's like Samuel L. Jackson's voicing a white guy.
There you go. Maybe I'll watch Boondocks at some point. I've seen a couple episodes, but maybe I'll watch the whole
I
thing.
definitely wouldn't watch it with your mom around.
Oh no, for sure. I'm aware it's a more grown up show. So
Yeah, because I think the first time I watched it, like I was sitting there and it was like a couple weeks ago, like maybe about a month or two ago, and I was like, I'm gonna watch. You know what? Everybody picks on me for not watching anime. You know what? I'm gonna watch Boondocks, and I'm sitting there watching Boondocks, and like the first thing you see is Grandpa. He's doing like yoga on the TV, or like the TV's playing. He's it's like dancing with the oldies or something, and he's just got his penis out and it's just swinging around, and I'm like, I did not want to see that.
wow,
What a it's like the first 5 minutes of the show, and I'm like, way to open it up, guys.
that explains Boondocks for you. So
Yep.
um, isn't there like a uncle or something who's racist against his own race?
Yeah, Uncle Ruckus. He thinks he's
Uncle.
white.
So that's why he's racist.
He's
Wild.
like, I got Irish in me.
All right, at the risk of getting even further off topic,
And getting
thank you guys
canceled.
for tuning in, and yeah, next week we will be taking the lead. So
We'll be in the Bermuda Triangle.
Bermuda Triangle. So
We'll make
all right,
Steven
thank you for tuning in.
believe.
We'll see you next time.
Thank y'all.